Today we're going to be talking about Orcish Bowmaster, right? He is kind of broken in many different ways. At the same time, he is just a 1/1 that comes on the field and produces another 1/1, deals 1 damage, right? That's pretty good in and of itself. But there's some combos we're going to be talking about today, some things that work really well in the deck, and some automatic kills, right? There's certain cards with this card that are an automatic kill. So let's get down to talking about them. But first, what card does this guy absolutely just kill, murk, annihilate, right? He kills Jace really well, right? So go ahead, put a Jace on the field. Pay 0 to draw 3 cards. Oh, your Jace just died, and I just got a 4/4. Like, that's so good. Like, it's an automatic Jace killer. Kills Jace. Your opponent can't even play Jace if you play a 2-drop Orcish Bowmaster. That's kind of crazy. Then again, Jace was banned from Modern back in the day, so it kind of makes sense to come out with something that would stop Jace, but a 2-drop? What other cards, what other combos are there? The 1-card combo kill with Orcish Bowmaster. Are you ready? This one's called Peer into the Abyss. Target player draws cards equal to half the number of cards in their library and loses half their life. Round up each time. Obviously, if you have an Orcish Bowmaster out and you play this card, they're dead. You know, you just gotta get 7. But yeah, it's a 1 combo kill, Orcish Bowmaster in this card, but it costs literally 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm right, it costs 7, 3 black, 4 generic. So that's a tough sell, you know, unless you really have mana ramp in the deck, mono black Tron kind of thing going on. I don't know, but this card would kill with an Orcish Bowmaster on the field just about any time in the game. Half their life, they're at 20, they're at 10. 10 cards off the top of their deck at least. They at least have to have 20 in it. You know, it's pretty simple kill. A lot of you probably already know Burning Inquiry. Each player draws 3 cards, then discards 3 cards at random. Normally, Burning Inquiry wouldn't be that good, but with an Orcish Bowmaster on the field, what does a Burning Inquiry turn into? Very good question. It turns into a sorcery speed lightning bolt that gets you a 4/4 on the field for 1 mana. That's really good. So I mean, I could think that a lot of decks that could be built around this card and discarding, and then if you were using Dauthi Voidwalkers also, that would give you a lot of options off the top of their deck to be able to use. And when you use it, it kills their Dauthi Voidwalker, and it gives you a 4/4. So I mean, yes, it's random. Yes, it kind of sucks that it's random, but for what it gives you a 4/4 for 1 mana. It gives you a 4/4 plus 3 plus 3. You get it. It gives you a 4/4 on the field, and it deals 3 damage either directly to your opponent's face or to a creature your opponent has. So I'm sure a lot of people have already thought about that, and there's many decks that could use it, and cards that you discard, like Call of the Netherworlds, would be a perfect card to be able to get back. There's other cards like Master of Death. You can get him back every turn, kind of like a Sinister Serpent in Yu-Gi-Oh! If anyone knows, that card got banned when it came out. Funny thing is, I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And I was actually ranked 7th in the state of Michigan, which was, you know, I did a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! So Sinister Serpent being a card that got banned that long ago, it kind of tells you how powerful it is to be able to get cards back out of your graveyard every turn. Quite a few combos that you can use with Orcish Bowmaster. Some are really good in decks, some aren't that great in decks, but we're going to talk about the ones that aren't so good and the ones that are really good, what cards actually really work with him. The number 1 combo that I think is a viable option for Orcish Bowmaster is to use a Rotting Regisaur, right? Now, why do we use a Rotting Regisaur? We use Rotting Regisaur because of him. Why is Obnixilis, the adversary, so good with Orcish Bowmaster? Well, that's because he's got 2 pretty good abilities that work very well with Orcish Bowmaster. The first one is each opponent loses 2 life unless they discard a card. If you control a demon or a devil, you gain 2 life. Now, black decks are already making them discard, so most likely they're just going to be taking the 2, or they can be taking the 4 if you do the casualty. Now, what's really great about Orcish Bowmaster is that when he comes out, he creates the token on turn 2. So if you really want, you can get 2 of these bad boys out turn 3. and start chipping away for 4, like that's pretty good in and of itself. Not the best, I get it's not a Liliana coming out turn 3, but with this deck, it's amazing. Because why? You want to pop this on turn 4. Why do you want to pop this on turn 4? Why? Oh, you can't see it yet, right? Okay, Rotting Regisaur comes out turn 3. Now they got to deal with an Orcish Bowmaster, a 1/1, and a Rotting Regisaur. So, turn 4 comes around, right? If they haven't killed 2 on your field, or 3 if you evoked a Fury or Grief on turn 1 and Fang Death or Malice, whatever, brought your evoke creature back, whatever it may be. Then on turn 4, you're sacking off your Rotting Regisaur to get a 7 loyalty Planeswalker on the field, right? That right when you do, right when you get him out, right? You get a 7/7 Omnixilis besides this one on the field. Now what can you do with that? Haha, right then and there, you can make your opponent lose 14 life. 14 life! Yeah, he gets to draw 7 cards, but you can also choose to draw those 7. Now, you might think, oh no, why would I sack off my Rotting Regisaur? Well, you can attack with him on turn 3, but you can also bring him back with your own Malice or Feign Death. Malice or Feign Death, both worth great in this combo, and they're already in the deck. So, I'm just saying. Now on turn 4, you have the option to. If you don't want to give your opponent 7 cards, I can completely understand that. You don't want to give your opponent 7 cards. I get it. So that also means that you can decide that you want to draw the 7 cards and lose 7 life if you're at that point, right? But I just think it is crazy, because what you're doing here, it's not just that, right? If you do that on your turn 4, make him lose 14, and you get an 8/8 on the field, an 8/8 orc, ready to attack that turn. So if they don't have anything to defend, you're going through. It's like, it's simple as that. So that, I think, is one of the best combos that I could think of, like in a modern deck. The only bad thing is, right, that you can't really find any good demons or devils to pair up with this. I looked through a lot, and I didn't see any that quite fit the list. There were a couple that I will include in the combos, but they're not anything like this combo. This combo is probably the best. There were no other power 7s that would be viable for the deck that I saw. You could potentially make someone's power more, but I didn't want to use any other cards really, right? All you need is your Rotting Regisaur and your Omnixilis, besides your Orcish. That's a 3-card combo. And that's really what the combos are that you see a lot of times in the games anyways, or 3-card combos. Very rarely will you see just a 2-card combo. But this 3-card combo that goes pretty well in a deck anyway, right? I like Rotting Regisaur. There's other cards that you could incorporate in this deck to make it really good. The only thing is you don't want them using the Dauthi Voidwalker, right, on your Rotting Regisaur. So you gotta be pretty careful about that. That would be one thing. So you'd have to really make sure that you were able to kill Dauthi Voidwalkers, right? I feel like people would rather deal with the Fury than a Grief in the battlefield on turn 1. Just because it decimates their hand. If they're a combo deck, they're devastated. There's really no other ways to get 2 cards out of someone's hand turn 1, right? That's why it's so devastating. Obviously, Fury's a big one, especially comes out of a 4/4 turn 1. Hard to deal with right away. There are things that do deal with it though. There's not much that deals with the Grief on turn 1, right? There's very little. The biggest one would be a Subtly. Subtly is really the only card that deals Subtly. Subtly is the only card that deals with the Grief on turn 1. And that way you can't Undying Malice it back. That way you can't Feign Death it. That way you can't bounce it. Because it goes to the top of his deck, but you're still dealing with it the next turn. So, but I mean, if you're playing a discard deck too with Subtleys, hey, I'll just take your Grief away. Oh, you got a Feign Death that does nothing? That's pretty nice. What really works well in this deck too is Call to the Netherworld, especially if you're using Orcish Bowmasters, Rotting Regisaurs, and Griefs. Why? Because what does it do? For 1 black, you get to get a black creature card from your graveyard, right? That's okay, but for 0 madness, you get to do it. So Rotting Regisaur discards it, right? Boom! Rotting Regisaur discards it. Then you can get your grief back from turn 1, or your Orcish Bowmaster that just got killed turn 2. So those work into your favor really big. It's a pretty decent card. Now, what else does it really work well with? Fable of the Mirror Breaker, because it lets you discard it. Pretty good. Being able to discard, still getting card draw off of it in a way from your graveyard. Again, you really have to be able to kill those Dothy Voidwalkers or hate cards for your graveyard. Here's another really good one, Days Undoing. Each player shuffles his or her hand and graveyard into their library, then draws 7 cards. If it's your turn, end the turn. Exile all spells and abilities on the stack, including this card. Discard down to your maximum hand size. Damage wears off in this turn and end of turn effects end. In other words, you really don't get anything, right? So if you played an Orcish Bowmaster on turn 2 and you use this on turn 3, you're not getting any value because that trigger goes away. It ends the turn. Anything that was on the stack's gone. There is something really weird about certain effects that do go off at the end phase for some reason. If someone could try and explain that to me, that would be great. I don't know exactly what effects could still go off, but apparently there are. But no, one that triggers from the hand draw does not go. So that would be pretty cool, though, I think, at least, to turn 2 then turn 3 and deal, 7 damage to their face, and you get an 8/8 on the field that can swing that turn. Pretty good, I think, still, because you hit them for 8 and 7. That's 15. 15 damage is a lot of damage to do on turn 3. The better way to go with this card in a deck, right, if you were trying to pair it up with an Orcish Bowmaster, would really be to use blue, white, black. I know that's a pretty hard sell, right? But you would just be splashing blue for 3, maybe 4 turns. 3rd or 4th turn, you need a blue, right? So what you're going to do is you Orcish Bowmaster turn 2, turn 1 X, whatever. Turn 1, you evoke, whatever you need to do, Thoughtseize. Turn 1, and then turn 2 Bowmaster. Turn 3, you do not use Days Undoing. You don't use Days Undoing. You use Teferi, right? So you get the Teferi out, and then you bounce one of his, draw a card. Hopefully Teferi survives. You do have a blocker from Orcish to block for Teferi, so maybe he survives, right? So now it's your turn 4. You can pop Teferi Time Raveler up to 2 to have your sorceries be at instant speed, and use this on his end step so that you get to have the evade. It doesn't end the turn if it's his turn, but on his end step you can use this card. You also have 1 mana floating if you wanted to evoke on your turn or wait. I like to say this deck would probably play Emphrates, right? Emphrates would be really good, especially with black, especially with grief. If he's not banned, we'll talk about that again after it happens. It would be really good to use on their end step on turn 4, because when you use it, yes, they draw 7, you draw 7, they drew 7, so it deals 7 damage to their face. You get an 8/8 on the field that's ready to swing the next turn, right? Those are 2 great things, and you get a hand that's full to start decimating their hand if you're playing black, right? So that's a good card. Obviously, you're going to run into other Orcish Bowmasters out there, but it's funny that, it's a card that there can be all these things to work with. Like the Wheel of Fate type one that's like suspend, draw 7, that actually works too, but it's the same turn that Orcish Bowmaster goes out. It's a 2 suspend, you play it, and then 4 turns, I believe it's suspend 4. Maybe 3, but still, it takes the spot of Orcish. You're never really going to want to play it, especially for suspend, and there goes in too much to use the suspend cards for that deck specifically. Pain's Reward. You bid any amount of life. In turn order, each player may top the high bid. The bidding ends if the high bid stands. The high bidder loses life equal to the high bid and draws 4 cards. Now, I don't know who's familiar with this card already. Very interesting card, interesting way to do things. There's not many cards that let you just say, I'm going to bid 20 life and lose, right? You, as the player who plays it, gets to start the bidding, essentially. So you can start at 0, make them bid 1, then you bid 2, back and forth, right? But it's very interesting, especially if you're already ahead in life somehow, to play this card. If you're behind, it's worse, but at the same time, how much are they gonna wager, right? The very interesting part about this card to me with Orcish Bowmaster is that if you do use it on turn 3, especially if you already ping them for 1, right, you're most likely going to get to draw the 4 cards. However, the biggest drawback for them, obviously, is what this card turns into on a turn 3 is, okay, I'm going to pay 0. Do you want to pay 1? Well, them actually paying 1 is paying 5 life, and they pay 1 to play the card. They get to draw 4 cards, and they have to pay 1 to play the card. But, I mean, you go up from there, you say 4, they say 5, they pay 9. So it adds up incrementally, and it really saves you the burden of them spending more life, especially if you're only 4 ahead. 4 ahead and you have Orcish, no matter what, you're getting the cards. 4 cards, right? Now, if they're low enough already, when you say 1, that's 5 to them. That's harsh, and no matter what, you get to put 4 counters on your army if they decide they're going to pay anything for this at all. Basically, it's a +4 to them every time. I really like the card. I really like the idea. Obviously, it's going to hurt really bad if you're behind. So you don't want to play this card behind. Like, if you barely have any life left, oh, they're just going to pay it and get it. But if you have a deck that is already pressuring them, pressuring their life, dude, they're not going to pay for it. So it's a 3-drop that draws you 4 cards. And if you're using a lot of just exile, blue card, exile, a white card, exile, to pay no mana cost or very low mana cost cards, that really turn 3 you'd be playing other stuff just than this, especially if you were playing subtleties with this. That would be pretty good because you'd get the blue card in your hand, you get the subtlety in your hand, and you wouldn't really have to pay that much to use it, I don't think. It's a very interesting card, especially on turn 3. I personally think there's better choices than this card. Cerebral Vortex. Target player draws 2 cards, then Cerebral Vortex deals damage to that player equal to the number of cards he or she has drawn this turn. So Cerebral Vortex isn't really that good, especially in the decks that I've been talking about, the card lists I've been supplying. It's okay. I think the best thing you could really do with it is play it turn 4 after a Burning Inquiry. So it deals 5 to them, they draw 2 cards, you deal 5 with the Orcish Bowmaster, and you get a 6/6 on the field. Wistful Thinking. Target player draws 2 cards, then discards 4 cards. I really have a lot of ideas with Wistful Thinking. It's actually a really good card because, I mean, turn 3 it makes them discard 2 cards, right? And say you're playing a Dothy turn 2 instead of an Orcish Bowmaster, it still gives you a lot of value off them discarding 4. They get to choose the 4, so obviously they'll keep the biggest thing, but at the same turn of the coin, if they keep the biggest thing in their hand on turn 3, they might not be able to play it right away. You know? At turn 3, you're taking their turn 3 away because now you have a Dothy and they don't want to give you their biggest converted mana cost card. Now they're keeping it in their hand instead, so they're really torn if they want to play it. They want to discard it because it's converted mana cost higher than what they're going to have on turn 3, or are they going to give it to you, right? What does it do with Orcish Bowmaster? That's the real question here. It gives 2 +1/+1 counters to give a 3/3, and it deals 2 damage, right? And it discards 2 cards. So you get 2 +1/+1 counters, or 2/2 on the field, or a 3/3, depending on how you look at it. You deal 2 damage, right? Because they're going to draw 2 cards, and then you get to make them discard 2 cards. So there's 3 really good effects that happens with Wistful Thinking when you have an Orcish Bowmaster on the field.